Number 1. I had been dating my girlfriend for about 8 or 9 months when this happened. I remember it had been a relatively warm day. My girlfriend's mother gets the call from the son of an old friend of hers. He tells her that her friend had just recently died, and that they were looking to sell the property and any belongings in her house. He went on to say that he and the rest of the family had already gathered what belongings they wanted, and since my girlfriend's mother had been such a good friend to her, that they wanted her to go ahead and take whatever she wanted before they sold it off. At the time, my girlfriend's family was going through some financial trouble, so they decided to see if they could find anything useful that might help their situation. Obviously, we were a little upset that this was how we found out that she had died, and my girlfriend's mom was of course quite distraught at the news of her friend. So we drove over to collect anything of use, sentimental value, or just anything interesting. We were already busy for the better part of the day, so the only time we could really collect anything was in the late evening, at least after 10 o'clock. Now, I did my best to maintain a respectful attitude, especially since I understood how important the relationship had been to my potential mother-in-law, but I couldn't help but feel a little excited. I didn't really know her friend very well, if at all, and I was about to explore a dead stranger's empty house in the dead of night, pun intended, and be allowed to take anything I liked without paying or fear of getting arrested. I mean, when would I ever get a chance like that again? Like I said though, out of respect for the dead, I contained my excitement to myself, and did my best to stay quiet. We arrived to a quaint house in a neighborhood I'd never been to, and we found the key under the doormat where the son had left it. When we went inside, we held our breath. The place was a mess. The lights were off, and we had to use our cell phones to avoid tripping over the stuff until we could reach the light switch all the way in the kitchen. We turned it on and began to explore. At first, we thought that the mess was caused by the family when they were rummaging through the belongings, but the more we looked around, the more we realized that this was simply how the house had looked. There were tears in some of the furniture, and the coffee table had been riddled with cigarette butts where the ashtray had overflowed, and just random piles of shit were on the floor. I did a quick search of the building to make sure that we truly were alone in this alien environment. All clear, no one but us. But holy crap, this house was a pigsty. It wasn't like walking into a condemned building, but rather like someone had purposely neglected taking care of anything for months. Years even. The master bedroom even had a thin layer of dust collecting on the bedsheets. There was expired canned food in the kitchen, and just about any and all liquor had been near empty or had gone bad. Cobwebs covered the ceilings, and my girlfriend even called me from across the house to take a look at the state of the bathroom. I could just feel my gut turning as I got closer. There was a putrid stench that emitted from it, and we both covered our faces. It looked like someone had just left some kids to play around with the contents of the medicine cabinet and then locked them in there for the next 6 months. There were splotches of what appeared to be Pepto on the walls, roach eggs lined the sink cabinets, and all sorts of random medicine and prescription pills were scattered on the floor. I didn't even bother to look in the toilet, so don't ask. But the shower was wide open, and we had no choice but to inspect it. There was moldy grout that festered where the tiles had fallen off and broken. Everything was discolored a yellowish brown, and there were patches of either dried blood or shit or whatever were all over it. We just closed the door and didn't bother opening it up again, not even for the light. As I asked about the woman's history, a picture began to form in my head, although I admit this isn't entirely accurate. Apparently, some years ago, this lady had lost her husband. Whether it was from death or divorce, I can't really recall. From there, she slowly stopped taking care of herself, and I guess she went into some sort of mental illness, and supposedly dementia, and did little more than drink and smoke and watch TV up until her death. This was a humbling thought for me as I just pictured some old lady just wasting away on her couch. Though I cannot say for sure if this was actually what happened, as I didn't know her family very well, and I couldn't get the true story from them. But as I looked at all the pictures of the family, I saw that they were amongst the only things that were regularly taken care of, aka the only things that were clean. So after we did our little inspection of everything, we fumbled through the piles, looked in the drawers and the cabinets and shelves for anything. The whole time there is this air, like we shouldn't be there and we're basically invading someone's space. Which, in a way, we really are. But this feeling was also accompanied by thoughts of what happened here. How far gone had this person been before the end? I immediately found some very old CBs and a ham radio in a storage closet, which I promptly picked up and put in the truck to give to my father later for his own personal enjoyment. My girlfriend looked for any still working appliances, and her mother went through the jewelry box and the photo albums. Then I look under the bed in one of the rooms, clearly where she chose to sleep the most. And way in the back, I could make out a black face with blue eyes staring at me. I jumped back for a second when I saw it, and I took another look and saw that it was a doll. Like one of those really old vintage dolls that stood about 3 feet tall. It had somehow got its face smeared into some really old shoe polish. I pulled it out and washed the grime off its face pretty easily in the kitchen sink. She actually looked in pretty good condition, considering that she just spent God knows how long in some shoe polish, and she actually looked rather pretty, so I decided to take her home and put her in the car seat, to add to my stock collection of Halloween creepiness. We then went and grabbed a few more things when my girlfriend's mom gave a quick yelp and asked if I put the doll in the truck. I said yes, and she calmed down a bit. She said she had given her a doll very similar many years ago, and her friend apparently loved it. But before the last time she spoke to her, about a year before her death, she said something like she lost it somewhere, or that someone stole it, or something. She said I could have it, since no one else was apparently going to use it. Just before we left, I went out to the backyard to take a piss. I was not going back in that bathroom. Just as I went to turn around, I saw 2 empty bowls and an empty bag of cat food. I prayed that whatever cats were there had been alright, and I left the house. I still have the doll, but I have to keep it in the storage shed with the Halloween stuff, as for some reason I can't stand having it left alone in the house for more than a day. Number 2. So when I was in junior high, I went to this one really nice Christian summer camp up in the mountains that had a lot of area on the property. Like, we're talking probably miles and miles of land that we could move around. There were several churches that attended, and all in all, it was pretty fun. We got to stay there for what I believe was a full week, and it was riddled with obstacle courses. It had a lake with swings and zip lines and slides going to it, and overall, nice scenery. Every day we'd play, have lunch, worship, and have a sermon, and then we'd get to play a game for the evening. Now, it usually wasn't anything special, but on Thursday or Friday, about a day or two before we would leave to go home, everyone got excited to play Capture the Flag at night. We would use glow sticks to identify ourselves which teams we belonged to. Of course, even though the counselors only permitted us one color glow stick to prevent us from cheating, a lot of people managed to get away with it anyway. I decided, since I was heavily obsessed with 007 at the time, I was just too clever of a spy to require the use of cheating and relied on my own stealthy tactics to hide in the brush and free my fellow teammates from the other team's prisons. Now, I was definitely no expert in espionage, but I knew how to conceal myself in the dark like nobody's business. I enjoyed doing that much more than simply taking the flag, as it allowed the game to go on longer, and the prisoners were always less important and therefore less guarded than the flag. Now, it's important to understand all this because it's going to come into play here in a bit. Now, there were 3 teams, green, blue, and pink. Each team had their own set of territories that merged by the lake. If an opposing team member crossed into a territory, the other team could tag them and then claim them as their prisoner, and then take them to the prison, where they would remain until someone freed them. The teams, of course, could identify each other from the glow sticks, but you could try getting past them by either cheating or by hiding it to prevent the other team from knowing who you were. If someone stopped to ask which team you belonged to, you had to reveal your glow stick or be disqualified, but you could still run away once you revealed your identity. Now, I happened to be on the green team, which was the team that happened to be closest to the administrative lodge building, and I had just returned to my base after successfully releasing people from prison. After receiving word that the blue team had just narrowly taken our flag, I decided to try and infiltrate their base. I began to approach the border in our territory, and tried my best to hide my glow stick and play double agent while still in my own territory. I made my way as close to the tree line as I could without sliding down this ravine and into a small creek, which was obviously out of bounds. While I was still within my territory, I saw a group of older boys, between 5 to 8 of them, approach me and ask me to show them my glow stick. Now, this was normal. It was much easier to surround and catch people in larger groups like this. I showed them my glow stick, and they didn't move. Now, most people just tried to arrest you, or they'd move on to the next person. These people didn't do either. I tried letting them know that this was still green territory, and if they were from blue or pink teams, that I could actually arrest them. They still didn't move. Then for a split second, I caught sight of something shiny in one of their hands. Before I could comprehend what I saw, I suddenly felt something dark and thick go over my head, like a bag. I couldn't see anything. I began to panic, and my mind suddenly sprinted into instinctive action, and I became hyper-aware of everything. I could feel my breath becoming hotter and felt the bag being forced down my torso and below my waist. At the same time, I felt something being wrapped around my legs. I quickly identified that I was being put into a sleeping bag head first, and that they were using duct tape around my legs. I decided to not make things easy for them. I ducked down beneath the sleeping bag and tried to hop away several times. The first attempt, I tried to tell them that they had the wrong team, trying to rationalize that this was some messed up way of taking people prisoner. But as they became more persistent in putting the sleeping bag over my head again and again, I realized that this was not normal behavior, and began screaming for someone to help me. I kept hearing them saying things like, "This guy's super slippery," and "Boy, he's a feisty one." At this point, I was pretty sure I was about to be kidnapped and hauled off to God knows where, and I didn't want to find out what that meant. Now, it wasn't that nobody could hear me, as I was still around a lot of people, but I'm pretty sure that either no one was taking me seriously, or they were undergoing some sort of crowd apathy and assumed that someone else was going to step in. I don't really remember when it finally stopped, but I want to say I ducked out of the bag again and I was attempting to crawl away. And that was when some random older kid I'd never seen before, and my prayer leader Tommy came up and asked me if I was alright and what happened. I didn't actually see the group of older boys go away, but they must have run off at this point. I began sobbing hysterically and tried my best to explain the situation. At some point they had tried to tie my hands with duct tape so I couldn't escape. So I began tearing at it with my teeth. Tommy used a key to cut the tape on my legs so I could walk. Tommy had the other kid walk me to the main lodge and get the camp supervisor while he went to go get my pastor. I told the camp supervisor what happened, and he took the situation very seriously and said he'd get a party together to find out who it was. He told me to remain in the lodge next to the fireplace and just relax, so I did the best I could, but I was still slightly traumatized by the whole ordeal. I was safe, but I had just narrowly escaped, and what disturbed me the most was that I had no idea what they were really planning to do with me. I just kept replaying it over and over in my head, and as I slowly peeled off the tape on my legs, another kid came in saying the same thing had just happened to him. We stayed in there for the rest of the game, a whole 20 minutes. I guess they didn't call it off because they didn't want to spread panic, and tried catching them in the act. Well, it must have worked, because the supervisor eventually returned and said that the game was finally over, and that they'd caught the people involved. The next day at lunch, I found out what happened. Apparently, a youth pastor and some kids in the 8th grade thought it would be a good idea to go grab some random kids with a sleeping bag, tie them up, and then roll them down that ravine and into the small creek below. just for kicks. I mean, who cared if some kid might have just injured himself on the way down and or couldn't get himself out of the creek before he drowned. To them, it was all in the spirit of good fun, but for the kids who had been targeted, we were clearly not amused. They had successfully rolled at least 3 other campers down the ravine before they tried to target me, and I was the first to escape and report it. The pastor then gave a public apology, and then seemed legitimately ashamed of what he and the boys had done. He then announced that he and the 8th graders who had been involved would be leaving early and then banned for returning for a full year or 2. And back then, this didn't seem like punishment enough for me, and I was furious, and I guess I still kind of am. But now, knowing how dangerous the world really is, I'm just glad it was a bunch of stupid kids trying to pull a prank instead of a group of actual criminals trying to kidnap me and a few kids for some sick purpose. Number 3. So I'm doing the final touches on my realistic prop katana for a cosplay while listening to a creepy YouTube video on my phone at 2:10 in the morning, when I realized I left my phone charger out in the car. I head outside with the katana still in my hand, and I keep it out of sight as best I can, in case anybody's watching. But as I do, I see a shadow move across the corner, around my street, and out of sight. I instantly get put on edge, and I prepare myself to now present my now fearsome-looking prop to whatever it is. I head for my car and turn on the light. And as I do, I hear a moan across the street and a woman mumbling something. My street is dead quiet after 10 p.m., so anyone walking around this late at night usually means trouble. So I turn to face the direction of the sounds, and I don't look away as I feel around for the charger. I'm there for a good solid 2 minutes, and I'm almost about to just say fuck it and go back inside when I find the charger. I lock the car. I continue to hear the whispers and moaning, and it's now just around the fence line of my house. I live on the corner of a cul-de-sac, and the sounds are now 30 feet from my front door. I'm 50 feet. I rush back to the door, clearly brandishing my prop sword, and hope it scares away whoever sees it. I make it, and I lock the door behind me. I head out into the backyard just to make sure whoever it is isn't going to stir up any trouble. Sometimes we get squatters who like to park behind the fence and have sex there because there's fence on either side of the road, and it gets pretty dark. So my first thought is that it's just 2 kids having the night of their life. It then occurs to me it's a man and a woman, and I could be witnessing a possible rape or worse. So I decide to continue and make sure everything is alright. So I sneak out into the backyard and silently approach the fence. I hear both of them moaning, and so I think, okay, good, they're just screwing. And then only the guy starts to moan. And now once every 2 seconds, as he walks down the fence line towards the cul-de-sac. Now, this moan wasn't just a moan of pleasure. It was the moan of someone who was completely out of touch with reality, and it was almost pained. Imagine the best zombie impression you've ever heard, only way slower, in your backyard along your fence. As they keep moving towards the cul-de-sac, I peek over the fence and my blood runs cold as I can see the porch light come on the front yard, and the shuffling, still moaning guy crossing into my front yard. I dash back into the house and close the door behind me, again locking it. I can hear my mom's dogs going crazy as they can sense that something is up. My neighbor's dog also does the same. I hear them try the handle on the front door. Thank God I locked it. I head into the entryway and I see through the door window both the guy and the girl standing and waiting for someone to open the door. They don't knock, they don't say hello, they just start pressing their whole bodies against the door. The porch light clearly shows both of them with red, dilated, bloodshot eyes and mumbling, "If I'm home." I could hear the wood creak on the door as they shift their whole weight on it. I'm thankful it's dark inside so they can't see me. Then my mom comes out of nowhere and stands on the top of the stairs and says, "Go back to sleep. You're keeping me up." I try calling out to her and saying, "Mom, there's 2 people down here. I think they might be," but she doesn't listen to me, and walks away simply saying, The dogs are barking at you. I don't care. Go to bed. Now they clearly know I'm here. And I'm all alone with just the two of them still staring inside. I raise my katana in hopes of intimidating them in case they do see me. Eventually they just stumble backwards and moan as they go back to the street. I then go through the rest of the house, making sure that everything is on lockdown. I know they were probably just high as kites, but to see the two of them pressed against the door and see their eyes looking through me in the dark and being outed by my own mom makes my blood curdle. But I'm still wondering, having not said anything and no knocking or any form of announcing themselves, what would have happened if I didn't lock the front door? Hey guys, it's Ares Leviathan here. So yeah, this video was a little bit more intense than the last one, wasn't it? But at least you know they all have a happy ending, just due to the fact that I'm still here. But I always think it's interesting how personal stories tend to have a little bit more of an impact than fictional stories. So yeah, I think it's a cool feeling that I get from sharing my experiences with all of you. It's just kind of a way for me to connect with you, and it's a really cool feeling. And I think I want to share that feeling. So I have an idea, and I'd like to try it if you guys are up to it. So there's a lot of other channels that utilize this idea already, and so it's not very new, like Lazy Masquerade and Bee-Busta and Dr. Horror, in the sense that they read other people's stories. So I'd like to try this, just so I can connect with you guys a little bit. So I can leave my email in the description, and then all you guys have to do is, one, submit your story, any story that you want, and I'll be happy to read it. And secondly, just to get through YouTube's red tape, just send a little permission or consent thing that says I can basically read your story. And so, yeah, you know, that's kind of the same reason why I always ask you guys to leave a comment in the description, because I always read them and I love hearing from you guys. So, yeah, anyway, thanks for sticking through. You guys are awesome. So, yeah, thanks for watching the video. And remember, stay spooky.